Wycombe Wanderers Show.
So it's 11:42 Central Standard Time. I am in the city of New Orleans in Louisiana. Louisiana, of course, being the home state of the Couhig family, and I am on my way about 100 miles out of town. I'm just leaving the famous French Quarter now, where I'm staying for a couple of days. I'm on my way to St. Francisville, which is where Rob and Missy live. I'm going to visit Rob at his home, and then going to go and see Missy at the Conundrum, which is the bookshop that she runs in St. Francisville. Really looking forward to seeing if there's any Wycombe Wanderers products on display at the shop, and also looking forward to meeting the Couhigs dogs to find out whether or not they do in fact have the very necessary dog leads that we've talked about so much on the show over the past season.
Hello?
Hi, it's Bob from Wycombe Sound.
I will let you in.
Thank you so much.
Access grid.
So the doors are magically opening. I can hear the dogs barking already. Oh, the dogs are waiting for me. Oh, that's so sweet. Hello. I didn't know you had a golden retriever. Hello. Oh, I'll try not to run over your dogs. Where is she? I will try not to run over your dogs. I'm just going to park here. Hello! How are you?
I was going to say, don't worry about the dog. He's an idiot. The other one's being stupid.
Hello! How are you?
Terrible you coming all the way out here.
Why?
Well, because
I'm so excited to come all the way out here.
Well, come on in. This one's Lady. And
Hello, Lady.
That's Buster.
Okay. So, Lady, are you a golden retriever? 'Cause you
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So we have a golden retriever at home. So don't worry. I'm very aware of how
Rambunctious.
and just
Good to
braveness.
see you.
Really good to see you. Thank you so much for inviting me
look.
out.
And look, my wife says I'm to make the apologies that the place is usually a much more pristine shape. But we just decided to move here full time
Okay.
from our home in New Orleans 6 months ago, and so obviously two of us can't live in this little place.
Right. Okay.
So the entire back half of the house is being redone.
That's quite all right. I'm not even looking. Don't worry.
Come on.
I'm imagining, given what you've done to Adams Park, I'm imagining it's going to be amazing.
It is.
It's going to have fantastic Wi-Fi.
Well, that's the one thing we do not have.
Oh,
is
really?
Great Wi-Fi.
Okay.
Because it's so rural, and your boy Elton Musk has promised me, but I think he diverted mine to the Ukraine.
Okay. Yeah.
Seriously, whatever you want to drink, we have. So,
Okay. Would it be very bad to say tea? Can you do tea?
I think I can do.
Okay,
You want
all right.
hot tea?
Hot English tea would be fantastic.
You know, my wife drinks hot English tea, and so she has instructed me on how to make
Okay.
it, including that you do the water apparently, and then you turn it off after it's boiled.
That's the one. If you put it on, I'm happy to do basically the rest.
Okay.
All right.
You will see your choice of teas.
Wow.
Every time, one of the reasons I was able to persuade her to do this is that for 40 years I've been going to London, and she and I got married 18 years ago, and ever since she has insisted that I bring back
tea.
I didn't, all the time I was going there, I didn't know Fordham and Mason existed.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So, but the beautiful thing is they now have it at the airport.
Ah, okay.
But they don't have all the flavors.
Yeah. So.
Okay, so which cup?
I'm happy with the mug. That's fine. Yeah. I'm not that English that I would go for my gran would go for teapots and things like that. But yeah.
My wife is huge into the whole ceremony. She drinks tea morning and night.
Oh wow. Okay.
And a big part of our life is watching English crime procedurals.
Okay.
Where we have tea, or she drinks tea, I drink coffee. I'm an American, for God's sakes.
Yep, that's fair enough.
And we eat Walker shortbreads.
Okay. Oh, wow.
So.
And what sort of crime shows are we?
Well,
what
I started with Inspector Morse.
Yeah, of course, the classic.
The classic, and then I followed it right on through to Lewis.
Yeah.
Went back to Endeavor, George Gently, all of them.
Yeah.
And so now we're watching one, I guess BBC did, Victoria, this is out of Venice Blood.
Okay.
There's
like a whole little industry now.
It is.
They just keep going. There's,
And so, we watch them all.
They keep finding different people to murder and whatever.
Right. And she's a huge reader, as you know, and I read a lot, but from 6:30, 7 o'clock after dinner, we watch 2 hours of TV. We crank through it.
Yeah. While drinking the tea.
And
going through the ritual, which,
she's big on the ritual. So she that's this morning's tea.
Okay.
Sugar.
She's becoming more English than Pete,
she's not handling the booze
okay.
I'm not thinking, but he handles it particularly well, but he handles it.
Yeah. I liked what you said that time about him becoming a folk hero.
He is.
And he is, yeah.
I was on the phone with him today. We've got to figure out something better than estraining him from his family 10 months of the year.
Yeah, I mean, that must be so hard. And
it is.
Particularly given COVID and everything, he's a saint. What he's done and the fact he's given up all of his time.
But as I told him, it gives him an advantage because he can always say, well, Rob, he's never done this. He could, though, say, well, I've done a lot. I think on this issue, maybe you could give in to me.
Yeah. Okay.
But we've never had to do that. It's been a remarkable journey for the two of us because my family's extremely close. I'm one of 6. And so my brothers and sisters all have kids. We all gather at every opportunity, 30, 40, 50 of us at a time. And so that whole generation, Pete, my son, have gotten along since my mother used to take them all to the beach. 13. My parents had 13 grandchildren, all boys.
Wow, all
and
boys.
Then my brother had a girl, and so we had one girl.
They could appear for the Wanderers.
They could do.
You could have a team, and you still have 2 on the bench.
Yeah, and Pete was quite the player.
Yeah.
And then his son just emulated him, and. This is why it's not ringing.
It's getting there, I think. It's.
I think it is, but I had to put this down, and I did not.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so you need to.
So now I turn it off, right?
Yeah.
And we give it a moment or two.
Yeah, we'll just give it a moment to slightly cool down, but that's fine. I'm impressed. You know what you're doing.
Well.
But it must be hard, the family times, because presumably Pete can't come back for all of them. So.
No, he misses too many. We were just on the phone. He's coming back. During COVID, it was horrible because there was no transportation.
Yeah.
And even when it stopped last summer, and I made my first trip, it took me 36 hours because the flights were so jumbled up and all that. But he'll come home next week, or the 23rd, I guess, when we play our last game. There's a 2-week period there if you pre-admit the match against Ascot.
Yes, of course.
And you can't pre-admit it.
No, exactly. It's an important competition.
He won't be able to get to that. But he'll come home for 2 weeks. Then he'll be back, and then he'll come back again. And then the summer will be with us either... One hopes, if we're not automatically promoted, immediately after the playoffs.
Yeah, of course, because there's it might go on for another 2 or 3 weeks, depending upon. That's fantastic.
So what are you doing in New Orleans?
So really, to be honest, New Orleans was just the end of my trip to come and see you guys.
Come on.
Seriously, that was the point.
Did you talk somebody into paying for this?
No, I should have done, because I said that to Colin, who obviously presents the show with me this morning. I should have contacted the Louisiana tourist people that you'll forever showing round,
Right.
and said to them, "Hey, I'm coming."
I could have set you up to interview the lieutenant governor. How long are you here for?
So here until Saturday. So
Let me see if I can't get him on the line.
that would be very cool. Or even when I'm back home, I can still speak
Right,
to
yeah.
him.
Well, I can do that. I mean,
Yeah.
I've helped run his campaigns and
Okay.
stuff. So
So that was the main reason. So actually, the reason that I'm out in Vegas and in the US was first of all to go to Vegas, a few days in Vegas because I hadn't been for a while, so I
Right.
really enjoyed that. And
are
then
you a gambler?
a little bit of a
Right.
gambler, I just like the whole Vegas scene. It's just an interesting town.
It
to
is
me.
wild.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't gamble at all. But you go out there, you take $100 and you play with it. I don't understand it. I'm standing there rolling craps, and I'm thinking, I could buy everybody at this table, and they got 5 times as much money out there, and they're having a better time than I am.
Yeah.
I don't understand it.
I mean, craps is something that from back in England, that's just, I don't get that at all.
Right.
So I stay with the safe one. So roulette, I can just about figure that out. Blackjack, and the other, poker maybe just about.
Right.
But I mean, and also craps is so intimidating because it's almost played in like that little stadium with the dice.
Correct.
And everyone's standing around you, and it's like I don't quite know what I'm going to be doing.
Pete's quite the poker player.
Is he?
And
Okay.
do you know why? It's an interesting story. He and his father is probably the best investor I've ever known in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And when he got out of college, he worked for my dad for a while, and then he worked for the state as an economic development guy. And then he left to start his own fund for some fellows who had money. And ultimately, he bought him out. But when Pete came to work for him when he got out of college, Kevin was doing a lot of loan processing, which meant also making the loans, but also collecting on the loans. He made Pete go learn to play poker, and not just like learn the rules, play it for real.
Okay, yeah.
So that he could evaluate people and make quick judgments, because
Wow.
Pete's very quick mentally with numbers and the like. But
of course.
as Kevin said, there's a difference between being quick mentally and putting it down on a sheet of paper.
Yeah.
It's different when you got to look a guy in the eye and you're making those. And so Pete has played in some high-level tournaments.
Oh,
and done
wow.
well, yeah.
Right, I think that's brewed. So where can I put
Okay.
the tea bag? You've got
Yeah. Right there.
There we go. Sorry.
You want milk?
Some milk would be great, please. And then we're good to go with that.
If you don't tell my wife, I'm going directly from the container.
That's fine.
Would you
Don't worry.
rather cream?
No, milk will be great. I'm not expecting you to put it in a little jug or anything.
Okay.
No, that's fine. That's perfect.
That'll
That's how we
be-
have it at home. That's brilliant.
Then you want honey?
No, that's good. Just as it is, it's fine.
Because, we have our own honey here.
Oh, wow, do you?
Sure, we got bees and everything. We're a full-service shop.
I'm very
Want to go
impressed.
sit out on the front?
Yeah, that'd be
Or we
great.
can sit inside if it's too chilly.
I'm happy to go out in the front. That's fine. Oh,
Sure.
great. So you have the Wycombe Wanderers dog lead.
Oh,
that
yes.
was one of the questions. Was do the dogs get walked on the Wycombe Wanderers leash? And
Yes.
they do.
When we lived in New Orleans, they both used to get walked on a daily basis. I'm wondering if Buster's collar's a Wycombe collar. Yeah,
It does. It looks the same colour.
Yeah.
Hello.
And we have photos of Buster watching games with us in his Wycombe t-shirt.
Oh, fantastic. So the one thing I'm going to say to Missy is, so we have 4 dogs at home. So it would be great to have the home, the away, and maybe the 2 goalkeeper as the leads.
Right.
That would be wonderful. Just so that then they've all got their own ones. So what's the ringing we can hear? Is that the...
Chimes.
Ah, okay. Very nice.
They are distributed. Missy and I, when we travel, we used to bring home a set of chimes.
Okay.
And so we have 3 or 4 of them in storage from the house in New Orleans. This place will be redone, including the lawns and stuff, in the next 2 months, we think.
It's very impressive.
We've had fun with it. We bought this after Katrina. When our house in New Orleans, we were staying with my brother. We weren't sure if we'd be able to get back to our house. And then after a month, we realized we'd be able to get back to it, but we wouldn't be able to live in it for 2 or 3 more months because of all the things. We were lucky; we didn't get any real damage, but just the way the city was. And in the meantime, I had grown up here in this area, and I had sworn I was never coming back. You know how you do when you leave to go away?
Yeah.
So all of a sudden,
Was it very much that's it? I'm done with it.
I did. I got on the plane to go to college. My pop said, "Are you going to be sad?" I said, "What time's the plane leaving, man? Get me on the plane."
Yeah, I could imagine my son being a bit like that. So he's on the cusp of going to university, and
Yep.
I think he'll be the same.
So but after Katrina, we bought this and began redoing it. So it was, for you guys, it's new construction. For us, it's old, 1803.
Okay, well that's
And if you
pretty
climb
good.
underneath the house, you can see the trees that were literally hand chopped and fit in together to form the foundation.
Yeah.
So we have kind of redone it once or twice, but this past spring, and this is sort of a Wycombe residue of my going over there now, trying to get over once a month for a week, living here, living in New Orleans. We realized that we were becoming slaves to our houses, and you don't get to go to Paris or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, again, that's a very English person thing, is that, whenever you speak to Americans, they always then say, oh, you must get over to Paris and you must get to Germany. It's like, no, we don't do that. And the fact that you're saying you never get to Paris, that, you're definitely becoming an honorary English person.
There you go.
It's, even though it's just, 2 hours by train? Yeah. Yeah, doesn't work. This is lovely. This is your Downton Abbey room. I'm very impressed.
Big Downton Abbey people.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
Is that another one of Missys' ones when she's not watching crime?
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
She's, when the movie came out, we actually watched the movie in High Wycombe.
Oh, wow, okay.
We've been up to, what's that, High Clare?
Yeah.
And did the Jane Austen presentation. There was a lecture series, or lecture up there. We have some friends of ours who we travel with, and we all went up there.
Fantastic.
Yes.
So, let's talk Wycombe Wanderers.
Okay.
So first of all, what the latest on the Derby County situation, and I appreciate it's a legal situation, so if there's things you can say, can't say, that's absolutely fine.
There's nothing really to say. I don't know a heck of a lot more than everybody else who picks up the paper in the morning and wants to see what the administrator's latest pronouncement is.
Okay, yeah.
I can say that the last time I went over, which was 2 or 3 weeks ago, I had a brief conversation for the first time since November with the administrator. They gave us some idea of what they would be prepared to recommend, but they didn't have any authority because they're not doing anything. And I told them that I would send them back a response, which I did the next day, and that I would look to hear from them. Hello?
Okay, so you're still waiting.
Yeah.
And so is it right that they've now settled with Middlesbrough?
That's what they say.
Okay.
Take this the right way. I take everything that happens with that whole situation with a ton of salt, because I don't know if anybody really knows what's going on. When it first happened, let me go back. When we played Middlesbrough and we beat them on the last day of the season, and we ended up 1 point behind, I told the gaffer that as far as I was concerned, was likely we were going to be in the championship, that they had obviously bended the rules, to say it nicely, and that there was a points deduction that should be given immediately. So I wasn't surprised when the league came out with 2 different schedules, because it made sense.
Yeah.
And
and completely unprecedented in my knowledge of football, going way back to 1982 when I started, really studying it.
Well,
I don't think that's ever been done before.
And one of the reasons is because the difference was so clear, so minute between us. The timing was the only issue. And so the league, in its defense, needed to be prepared. Mm-hmm. And the judgment of the panel had said, at the latest, Derby needed to file their new financials under the agreed scheme by August the 14th, which was a week or two after the season began. Most rational people knew that they were going to file it and they would immediately be deducted the penalties. So the league wanted to be prepared. I pushed and wanted to be prepared. Derby didn't answer. People forget this. They didn't file them by August the 14th. We could have, I don't know that the league would have agreed, but I suspect they would have, switched places as late as August the 14th or even the 21st, because what most people don't realize, Derby and we had exactly the same record.
Yeah.
Up until August the 21st or thereabouts. Yeah. And so it would have been no harm, no foul, and off we could have gone. The reason I feel particularly aggrieved for our club is Mel Morris acknowledging that he deliberately didn't want to file him because he knew the moment he did there would be a points deduction. Mm-hmm. So that's what makes ours different than most. It's not a question of, well, if the league had done X, Y, or Z, it is that he, following a pattern, he deliberately avoided his responsibility. It created a 16 million pound loss for us if you go at a minimum over 2 years. Now, look, we're rational people. You're not going to get 16 million pounds from a deadbeat company, but there is something to be had there. And I can't get into what we've told them, but it's a rational settlement could be had, or we'll go try the thing. And if we try it, we're going to end up with a very substantial judgment, and that's what people don't understand. Doesn't matter to me if it makes sense to settle it, but if we don't, we'll take our chances and off we go.
Is there a sense of Derby doing that normal thing of thinking it's little Wycombe Wanderers, so therefore actually we're going to try? It was interesting to me that, and I know you said you take it with a pinch of salt, that they've already said that they've settled with Middlesbrough. Now, going back a long time before you were getting into football, Derby and Middlesbrough are probably old friends from the old First Division days, and whereas they probably look at Wycombe as being this little club, possibly in their words, certainly not mine, that maybe didn't deserve to even be in the Championship that season, so why should we give them any money?
No question about it. And their perception was, they had a known quantity in Steve Gibson and Middlesbrough. As you say, they've known each other forever. I think they've changed their mind. I think they did a little research. I am not, I found it amusing missing...
A little research about you and your background.
We found it amusing. One weekend, something particularly egregious was said by somebody, and so we had 500 people from Derby emailing us, Twittering us, hoping that for the worst possible outcomes for our health and the like. And you almost had to laugh. I felt sorry for the people, but who did they think they were dealing with?
Sure.
Oh my gosh, they've intimidated me. I give up. What people don't understand, I take my responsibility seriously. It's not just for me. 25% of the club's owned by the trust. Mm-hmm. I owe it to them. And as my wife will tell you, half of my 75% is owned by her. I better take it serious for her.
Yeah. And also, I know that you are a guy who loves your sport, and so I'm sure that there is some sympathy within you for the fans of Derby County, but actually we're not talking really about the fans of Derby County.
No.
We're talking about the business people behind
the corporate
it.
side of it that sat there and made a deliberate decision not. And here's why. They knew that if they fulfilled their obligation, they would be now in League One trying to sell a League One club for £50 million, with the likelihood that they're going to get deducted because they would have had the points deduction. What they should have done they did what they needed to do. If it had been me, I would have gone in, I would have thrown myself at the mercy of the EFL. I would have said, pound me for every point you can possibly think of, but do it now, send me down so that I can go out and sell this club as a clean League One club with a beautiful stadium, with a beautiful manager, and we'll take our chances of going up again.
Yeah, yeah.
And they would have been back in the championship in all likelihood this year, or next year.
Yeah, yeah. Talking then of League One, how is this season going for Rob Couhig?
Well, for me, I don't kick a ball. I enjoy it. Look, being able to get back and be with the fans is huge. I really like what we have done off the pitch. The new training, not new training ground, but the redo of the training ground has been sensational. I don't know that people understand why we would spend the money we did on it, but from my perspective, it's where the players and coaches have their office. It's where they go to do the 95% of their work that comes across on a Sunday or a Saturday.
Yeah, it is their workplace, really.
It is.
We think of it as the stadium, but actually that's not true.
Right. They spend 3 hours every 2 weeks at the stadium. Yeah. They spend 40 hours a week or 50 hours a week at the training grounds. So we wanted it to be nice. And look, the Trust membership and volunteers have done great, but we've got that. For the first time, they actually have good Wi-Fi without Mr. Musk's help. He says with a certain bitterness. But they have a new media room. They have enough room for the coaches. With Pete and I were talking about, we have a 50% bigger coaching staff than we did when we came in. We have 50% more trainers and the like than we did when we came in. We have analysts that didn't exist when we came in. We have a squad that's 15 people bigger than it ever was.
And we have a squad. The very fact that you're using the term squad,
right,
which definitely previously Gareth would talk about a team rather than a squad.
And then at the stadium itself, my frustration is I don't know if people understand how huge the change is and how comparatively good our stadium is to every other stadium, not just League One stadiums, but virtually top to bottom with our technology. Not just, we got a great scoreboard, but half of the League One teams have a great scoreboard. We have the state-of-the-art LED boards that go around. 2 or 3 premier clubs have that same state-of-the-art. So I can't say we're unique on that. The combination in League One puts us apart. Mm-hmm. We have brand new floodlights, something I never thought would be big, but it's huge. And I give my man Trevor Stroud, he said, we got to have floodlights, okay? You can be in charge. Get us the floodlights. And if you notice, sometimes after we score, they'll do the little, that's Trevor.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
The speaker system is truly state-of-the-art, and I blame my brother Kevin for that. Kevin owned a company by the name of PreSonus. And you'll see the PreSonus. Of
course, yeah.
Kevin, as a gift, gave us $30,000 worth of speakers. As I told him, thanks a lot. It's ended up costing me $1.5 million because those speakers weren't what was actually needed for inside the stadium. We had to change out the entire inside so that we now have the best speaker system of a stadium in the UK. And when we did that, we had to change out our CCTV, So we now have you can look at your face as you're coming down Hill Bottom Road towards the stadium.
And you can say, hey, it's Bob from Wycombe Sound.
That's exactly, this guy's nothing but trouble. and we can pitch point everybody, and we have 2 sets of phone systems and all that. And the thing that's most remarkable, and I didn't understand this, is that in the UK, apparently broadband access, Wi-Fi access in stadiums is still relatively spotty.
It's terrible.
Well,
I watch a lot of football back home, not only Wycombe Wanderers, and the number of times you go into a stadium, and of course it's half time. It's before the game and half time. That's when you want to access it. You want to know what the half time scores are. You want to know what the team is beforehand. Basically, our ground is one of the very, very few that you can use the Wi-Fi, and that's a huge thing for any football fan.
Everybody there can use it at the same time. As a result, we have had, Chelsea came, but I suspect they're not in the market today to buy it. But we've had a half a dozen Premier League clubs come and look at our system. We've had innumerable lower league clubs come in, Championship, League One clubs come and look at it, because it's spectacular. And so, but we don't do a good job of, and maybe we do a good job of advertising, and maybe I miss how, I'm just so impressed with it myself. I want everybody to be impressed with it.
I think people are impressed, but I think also it's almost the reverse, that people are so unimpressed when they go to the other big stadiums and it doesn't work, because you're so used to Wi-Fi working anywhere and everywhere,
right,
that when you actually get somewhere that it doesn't. And the classic example is Wembley Stadium, which of course is also sometimes, depending on the event, known as Wembley Stadium, sponsored by EE, who are of course a mobile company. Right. And it has by far the worst mobile phone reception I've had at any ground.
Really?
Yeah. And it's sponsored by a mobile phone company. So I think when you go to Adams Park, you're pleasantly surprised, but it's quite easy to then forget that actually, hey, this is fairly unique in a football term. So,
and we have the new speakers outside that are just coming in. I think we put them in for the last game, finally used Kevin's speakers. So we have wonderful speakers outside. We're working on the access. That remains the bugaboo to the place. Until we get that beat, I suspect we're putting our head against the wall a little bit.
Is there ever a time where you think, actually, is there somewhere else in Wycombe we could be? Have you considered moving away from Adams Park?
Remember that I am like 95% of owners, never 100% satisfied with the deal or what you got. My partner in this is the trust, and they are our landlord, and they are jealous about the use of the facility, as they should be. But every once in a while we think, gosh, we're spending a lot of money. Do we really want it to spend it here, or would we better off spending it out on the 404 or where someplace? But you got to find a big chunk of land. You got to pay for a big chunk of land. And I'm at an age where I don't know that I want to get into a 6 or 8 year battle to put together a new stadium.
Yeah.
But we have to do something with the Terrace Inn. It is fit for purpose, but it could be so much better. I would like to bring it closer to the pitch itself. I'd like to make it a little bit more vertical. I'd like to put more hospitality area underneath or on top, or both. And I'd like the sound to come from it to be as good or better than from the visiting area, which drives me nuts because they have that great acoustical area. But we've come up with a plan for that as well. We're probably going to divide the visiting away end in half next year and sort of move half of them onto the family side.
Now, you did that a few weeks ago, and I thought it was wonderful. So you had the kids from Millbrook School come in, and because they're school kids, they made a lot of noise the whole game, and it worked. It was a really, really good use of that space.
I have to tell you that the Millbrook School, we're in a partnership with them now
Of
where
course,
they
yeah.
park cars. And Pete and Neil came to me and said, or Matt, and said, look, we'd like to give these tickets to the Millbrook School. Well, one thing people have learned is you don't go to Rob and say you want a discount or give. I don't mind writing a personal check, but I don't want the club to. And I was opposed to it, but Pete used his goodwill, Matt used theirs, and I agreed to it. And by coincidence, for that game, we did a promotion for our subscription plan. And the guy who won, I don't know if this was top prize or the lowest prize, got to spend the day with me.
Yeah, I saw.
Yeah, and so we're sitting having breakfast, and I said to him, when was the first time you went to a Wycombe game? He said, well, when I was in school, they gave us a free ticket. Okay, maybe these guys are on to something.
Definitely. I think if you could give some tickets away to a school for
Right.
each different game, you're going to get some of those kids.
Right.
Definitely. I mean, the first football game I went to was when I was 8 years old.
Oh, really?
And I've been a football fan ever since. And and I think there's a lot of similar stories as
Sure.
well. If you give the tickets to to the parents and the kids, then yeah, definitely. But it was a great use of that stand.
Right. No, they convinced me.
Yeah, that's really good to hear. But yeah, so with regards to the access, can you ever see another road going? I don't even know at the other side of the club.
And I'm not telling stories out of school. We're working at that constantly.
Okay.
I, in fact, asked Neil, who's our operations guy, and Trevor, why don't we have it? What do we need to do? And so that is, Neil and I kid, because I always come over there and I come up with a list of 23 things I'd like to do. But that's top in the off season. The only other thing I want to do that's even as high on that list is probably the replacement of most of the men's bathrooms. Isn't that weird?
Yeah, but I can understand that as well. So yeah, you do. The thing is, it's a room that you spend such a short amount of time in.
Right.
But but at the same time, yeah.
I
get where
mean,
you're coming from.
want people I want people when they go there to walk away and say, that was a terrific time. Did we win? And then if we win, it's just that much better.
Sure. I think the trouble with English football culture is that actually the winning is, for 95% of the people who go, that's the number one thing. Now, I went to the Pelicans game last night, and I was really interested in that actually the whole psychology is slightly different. Now, the game was really poor. It was a really bad game. The
First bad game we've played in a while. Too.
Okay, yeah. So Orlando Magic were much better, really, and should have been far further ahead. And the Pelicans didn't take the opportunities that they had to actually to be closer. But what really fascinated me was that, with still 20, 30 seconds to go, they will be doing things like the fan cam and the dance cam or whatever. Now, if you did that at Wycombe and we were, say, 2-0 down after 85 minutes, you'd probably get a lot of fans doing rude gestures and not wanting to know. But doing it at the Pelicans game, everyone's still having a good time and dancing around. And I thought, this is the difference between us.
No,
actually, in England, everybody goes because all they want to see is a Wycombe 1-0 win. It doesn't matter if it's a rubbish game and if it's a really poor goal. If we come away and we've won 1-0, everyone's like, oh yeah. Whereas the amazing thing with the Pelicans, even when they knew that they were going to lose, everyone's still having a good time.
Well, you're very perceptive, because when I talked about buying the club, my brother Kevin, who is a huge English football fan, I should say. He's been a Liverpool guy for 40 years, used to fly over to watch the team a couple of times a year, knows every player for the past 50 years. Pete, big football fan. I didn't come into it that way. I was a baseball guy, which is even more like that Pelicans game,
Yeah.
because you play 150 times a year. If you're going to get emotionally beat up because you lose a game, you got no place in this. And they both cautioned me that my natural sort of tendency towards showmanship and having a good time ran the risk of being not welcome, is the kindest term I will use, by the traditional fan. And that I had to be very careful in how I approached it. Fireworks. I am in love with fireworks.
Let's make sure that that's done. Yeah.
I get criticisms from people saying, what is this about? Why are we don't need to waste our money on fireworks. And I'm thinking, it didn't cost you a penny. What do you think? Because I don't have fireworks, I'm going to have somebody else playing striker next week? How about we recognize that it's the totality of the experience? And here's, just as I acknowledged that free ticket actually got me somebody, we have had many a family call up and say, just trying to make sure you guys are having fireworks because the family loves the fireworks. Now there is a coterie of people, a strong coterie, who if we never have fireworks again will be happy. The fact that we've never lost a game with fireworks,
I was going to say,
works in our favor, and so we're trying to figure out if we should put them on for Saturday or not, but it's hard at 5 o'clock in the afternoon.
yeah, of course.
But yeah, so that cultural divide, that's probably, I mean, the biggest difference. And of course, Kevin, and I'm a reader, so I've now gone back and educated myself on how the sport came to be. You know, from the mill guys working for 6 days and you get off at noon and you go get yourself loaded and then you go watch the mill team play that the owner sponsored to make everybody feel better, and then you could get drunk and you could have a fight and it was all male dominated. And one of the first things we try to do, and the reason we have Missy on the board, is that we believe in a family atmosphere. And that sort of runs headlong into a lot of traditionalists who think it ought to just be the guys out drinking beer and yelling and screaming. But a lot of the women do too. So we live in a different culture.
I think it's interesting you come at it from a baseball point of view, because I think, and I possibly even said this to you before, I think there's a lot of similarities back home between baseball and cricket.
Right.
In that people will go to cricket and it doesn't really matter.
The game broke out while I was there.
You know, they're happy to go, they'll drink the beer, they'll have a good time, and they'll come away, and whether your team has won or lost doesn't really, unless it's the Ashes or something like that,
right.
It doesn't really matter. Whereas I think our football's codes, both of them are very similar. I haven't been to see the Saints play, but I have seen various football teams, and I would imagine that, if the Saints have lost, maybe there wouldn't have been quite so many fans doing the dance cam thing, say, towards the end.
No, there would not be. And in fact, there's a palpable deflation of people's enthusiasm in the city of New Orleans when, remember, I grew up when the Saints never won. Or rarely won. And when you were losing, it just sort of took it out of you. I'm a big college football fan. LSU, when they're winning, there's nothing better. You walk into that stadium, 100,000 people screaming and yelling and having a great time. And when you walk out, if they've won, everybody's still having a great time. If you've lost, you got to be careful. There might be a fist fight breaking out.
Yeah. And I think that's almost that's
right.
The culture. I think that's what you're dealing with regards to people who then complain about the fireworks and whatever. It's such a minor thing, I realise, but
well, it's not. It is and it's not, because a sport and an enterprise can only be successful if it understands the culture in which it operates. One of my deals is to try and subtly change a little bit of the culture and say it's okay to have a good time. Even if we lost, you don't want to be happy that you lost, but it's not like anybody got killed, for God's sakes. And we're going to play again 45 more times.
Yeah.
And you know, but the thing that has been incredible to me that I did not understand is the existential nature of the English football system. If you get relegated, oh my God, that is, nobody may get killed, but somebody can lose a job. And I'm not talking about a high-priced manager. I'm talking about if I'm in League One next year as opposed to Championship, I will have probably 30 less people working for us. Those are real jobs.
Yeah, and those are people that you know.
Yeah, and so you get to know them.
Is that something, and I'm not suggesting at all that you're going to become head of the EFL or anything, is that something that you would like to change? Would you
No.
Would you like to see the American system come into England, or is there actually
Vice
something...
versa.
I was going to say, is there something that could be learned?
Let me tell you, if you could take that and put it into American baseball, it would change baseball so much for the better. There is nothing, well, I say nothing worse, but to go watch the Marlins and the Tampa Bay Rays when they're both in last place and it's the middle of August and it's hot and you're out there and it's you and 8,000 of your closest friends in a 50,000 seat stadium, and it's awful, except baseball's a different game. I'm sitting there watching a baseball game, I'm drinking beer, you and I are having a conversation, my wife's reading a book next to me, you know.
But if there was a chance that the Marlins
We're
could
going
be,
out.
Yeah.
Then they'd have 35,000 people
But
in
of
there.
course, that's what happens, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's that, you know, that Adams Park becomes packed and would have been packed last season. And as you rightly, you know, some of those final games, you know, if the fans had been there,
Well,
would
that's
have been
why
a huge difference.
And I got to tell you, I beat my head against the wall, and then I realized I was wrong. That this is, in fact, one of the reasons people are so intense about these games, because everything matters. And soccer, baseball, yeah, you win or lose on the swing of a bat, but you know when the guy's getting ready to swing the ball, swing the bat. In soccer, I can't get up because, yeah, your team's got the ball and they're going down, but we could steal it and be out on a breakaway and I missed the only score of the game.
Yeah, you've got to sit there for the 90 minutes, and particularly with Wycombe Wanderers, don't leave until it's over.
Till it's over.
Yeah.
When we were looking at various teams, I had a guy, Mark Palmer, helping me out. And we were down in Yeovil, and I said to Mark, I'm looking at remember my background again, baseball. I'm trying to figure out how much food and drink I can get you to eat in the course of 9 innings, all right? So I built our concession stands when we built our new stadium so that even as you're buying your food and drink, you're looking at the game, so you're not missing much, but you can constantly be rotating through.
Yeah.
And everybody, all during the game, is up in that concourse area, eating, drinking, talking to each other.
But it's great that you can do that and still watch the game.
Right.
And I would love that to be a standard thing at our football.
So I tell this to Mark, and I said, why don't we have that at our soccer matches where people could get up? He said, let me tell you, I'm not leaving while the game's on there. If I got to go to the bathroom, I'd rather be on myself than get up and leave. And I'm like, I can't believe this.
But when it comes down to it, though, that's not true, and you do go to the bathroom.
Right.
And as a Chicago Cubs fan, what I loved about going to Wrigley Field was that you could go to the bathroom and that they will pipe Pat Hughes' commentary
Absolutely
into the bathroom, so you still know what's going on.
And they have the TVs in the bathroom. So, yeah.
You know. You know, this is a perverse thought because I know him, but could we have Phil Catchpole's commentary piped into the bathrooms at Adams Park?
You know, that's a great idea. I know of no reason why we can't. Speaking of great hires, one of the best things we have done in our 2 years was convince Phil to leave what was a relatively safe position and come with us. He's a professional. You know this.
Yeah, he's fantastic.
And he's been already changing Wanderer TV. But just Wrigley Field's one of my greats. But I tried cases around the United States, and one time I was in Chicago for a couple of weeks, and a buddy of mine who went to college with me, I got tickets because I owned a baseball team, and we went there and watched batting practice, and we had a couple of beers. And the next thing you know, we're both not passed out, but we're sound asleep in the sun. And Andre Dawson, that's how long ago this was, hits a home run to win the game, and we both woke up. What just happened? No idea.
Wow.
But that's what I loved about baseball. It's exciting and it's fun, but it's also, we covered 20 years of our history while we were sitting there drinking beer.
And that's the great thing about baseball. With regards to the TV package, I'm surprised that the EFL don't sell them separately, so that possibly you could have the Championship being sold to Sky, League One sold to BT Sport, because it would get so much more coverage than the little scattering of games that League One and League Two get, say, live.
I think it's because the owners don't recognize the value of what they have. So many of the owners have gotten into it and we saw this in minor league baseball. They got into it because they love the sport and they're from their hometown, and so they're going to make sure their town does all right. That's probably 40% of them. There's another 30% who think, if I can get this team up into the Premier League, I can make a gazillion dollars and it'll be good. So, and then you have 30% who are trying to find their way, but there's so little support to try anything different. The good thing for us in COVID is I got to meet a lot of U.S. owners via telephone. And so you begin to share common stories. One of the things that came out as a result was we all were supportive of cost controls. Oh my gosh. And some of the guys didn't want it. How do I put my money up to make sure? Well, you know what? If we all have the same amount of money, NBA style, NFL style, Major League Baseball style, you can put a tax on it if you want to spend more money. But we control spending, and then it's on me to hire a better manager or build a better training facility or do things, and I'm actually trying to build value in my club that will sustain beyond it. I have begun to proselytize for a cap of spending on players that's not related to how much you can spend per individual, but take the total package you get from the league in media money, solidarity money, whatever it is. That's it. Spend whatever you want on developmental players, but if you're a 25 or 30 person squad, if you get 2.5 million from the league, that's what you get to spend.
Okay.
Everybody's even. Now, do I then have to pay Gareth more money? Probably, because, everybody say, well, that guy does a lot with little.
Yeah.
So he becomes more valuable than if, the club down at Ipswich drives me nuts. They get bought by a pension fund. And I asked somebody, how do you convince a pension fund to buy a club where you're going to lose money? By definition, isn't the point of the pension fund to accumulate? And I was told that they convinced the pension fund they will get their money back when they get to the Premier League. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Please send these people over to see me. Yeah. I have a club.
And you think there's so many clubs who are all trying to do the same thing.
Yes.
And that's, and only 3 clubs go up a season. And most of the time these days, they're the 3 that came back down.
Yeah, these three of 6 or 7 clubs.
Yeah.
Yep. I got to know the CEO of Fulham. Maybe not CEO. The guy who lives in Jacksonville. His friend and my friend. We talked a lot, and man, the difference though for those guys when they go up. And of course, what Fulham's doing with their real estate investment all around is huge. I find it. That's the part I love. I could get really excited by all that.
You mentioned Gareth. with regards to, say, our recent dip in form, is there ever a time where you have what we might call the sort of itchy finger trigger syndrome, where you're thinking, is this the right guy to be leading Wycombe Wanderers?
No. Two reasons. Philosophically, I've run both of my law firms and my other businesses, and I am never a believer that, oh my gosh, you tried a case and you lost it, therefore you're not good enough. It's the body of work that I'm looking at. Are we making progress as time goes on? You can't measure in sport, it seems to me, even if you have a disastrous run of 20 games. That doesn't mean anything. It's why are you doing it? What's happened? What did we look forward to and the like? And so I have told Gareth, and this was during either early on or during the run, I said, man, the one thing you should never worry about is your job security. You can lose the next 20 games, and I'm going to expect to see you next August here. He makes it easy to say that. I am convinced that he's a good judge of talent. He's a very good man manager. He's pretty good at managing me, which is part of the manager's job, truthfully. He keeps me informed. He and Pete and Andrew, I think, have a great eye for talent. So, look, if I expect to be promoted at the end of this year, but if we're not, that's the vagaries of sport, not the failure of him. Now, if he were to come up and do something absurd, that'd be different, but I don't see it. I mean, he's at an age where you know what you got. And then I watch a lot of these guys. What are they expecting the manager to do? Is he going to kick the ball?
Yeah, Frank Lampard recently saying, did you think I had a magic wand? It's really heartening to hear you say that, and really that question was for all of the people, or the minority of people on Facebook, on one of the Wycombe Wanderers groups that I've read in the past couple of weeks, where they're questioning the manager, and you think, well, this is the guy who's got us up, out of League 2, out of League 1, and surely after 500 games and 10 years, you must realise that actually we're onto such an amazingly good thing.
I hate to disappoint your listeners, but I don't do Facebook. I think I have something left over from when I ran for mayor 20 years ago. They opened up a Facebook account. I wouldn't know how to get onto it. My wife looks at it, but she's very judicious. She doesn't let anybody be her friends who's not her friend. I got a buddy or two of mine who are on it because they're like all soccer fans or football fans. They want to know what everybody's saying, and so they will call me occasionally and say, oh, you got some disgruntled fans. Well, okay.
Everybody has disgruntled
right.
fans. It doesn't matter if you're Manchester City or whether you're Swindon.
You got to remember my background. I ran for mayor, and then I endorsed a guy who ultimately became mayor, and ultimately he went to jail. Okay? So I have had people vilify me in the past.
You're used to it. Another thing that I notice on Facebook is some of the season ticket holders from a couple of seasons ago, when they wavered the amounts, I think were very much under the impression that you were going to hold the party of all parties for them.
Yeah, and
what's happened to the party of all parties, Rob?
That's a fair question. I think if there's one thing I would take personal responsibility for not fulfilling, it's that so far. Part of it, and I'm going to give you a litany of excuses, but I want to start with saying there is no excuse. Time got away from us. We were unable to keep coming over there the way we thought, and so for the first quarter of the season or third of the season, you couldn't plan very much. People don't remember this, but in September, nobody was sure if we would play the full season, what the circumstances were. So
COVID's only, it's still around.
So we should have done better. So we've tried to do some things since then. Recently on Wycombe, on Wanderer TV, we have some stuff that's behind the paywall. We've made that available to everybody who left the money in. We are looking to bring in, and I don't know when this will be going out, but we're looking to create on the weekend when we were going to play Fleetwood. Now that game's been moved up to the 15th. Either having a in-house scrimmage or something that those fans would be invited to watch and have free beer and dogs and the like, and do more things. So it's probably, I love a good party. We're probably not going to end up having the party of all parties, but we'll end up constantly thanking them and giving them more and more stuff.
Yep, absolutely fair enough. Thank you for answering that so honestly.
Well, it's a fact of life.
With regards to Wanderers TV, I think that's absolutely great. What then are the sort of the plans for that? Because I know that actually there's other things on the horizon.
I love Wanderers TV. I am a huge believer. This gets into our belief that EFL football is a huge international property. I Follow was good, but we had to use the template that was given to us by the EFL. We couldn't have our own website that didn't follow the template. We couldn't do as much behind the scenes things. Phil was brought on because he's a smart, innovative guy, in addition to being, I think, the finest commentator I've heard in any sport. And I've been dealing with guys in a lot of sports because he's got a natural enthusiasm. He can be for the hometown, but also criticize the hometown at the same. That's a fine line that a lot of guys can't do it. The old Harry Carey deal of Harry would talk about what was good, bad, and indifferent with the Cubs.
And really interesting to hear you, as the owner of Wycombe Wanderers and the employer of Phil, say that as well.
Well, and you remember Steve Stone, when he was with Harry, he would try and get Harry to calm down sometimes. My son wants me to talk Phil into coming up with a video dictionary of Philisms, you know? What does it mean to maraud down the left-hand channel, you know, for those of us in the United States? Or he had some other terms he was using, and Robbie called me up in frustration. He says, look, two things. Since Phil took over Wanderers TV, we haven't won. That was several weeks.
Yeah.
And Phil quickly rejoined. He said, no, we won the Oxford game.
Yeah.
Tell Robbie, back up. But also, I need an explanation of some stuff. So, fun. Go back, and this weaves into the discussion you and I really are having, which is, it's an existential game, but it's a game.
Yeah.
You got to enjoy it. One of the things that I love about my family is we have a good time. We laugh. We are hard fighters, but few have as much capacity. If you came to Thanksgiving dinner with us, the way this team got bought was my brothers and I are sitting around smoking cigars and telling big stories, and they said you couldn't buy a club. I'll show you can buy a club. And you're laughing, but Phil brings that joy to it. He also brings a sense of commercialism, commercial reality. So the plan for Wanderers TV is ultimately to build out a channel that has a lot of content. And you're starting to see more and more long-form interviews. For your area of what you do, to take and give a guy 4 minutes of time is huge. For us to be able to do a 30-second thing that the world can see on Twitter, but bring them into 8 or 9 minutes or 10 minutes, and by the way, sell them a shirt while they're there, or do a background of, you know, what people see Pete as the sort of folk hero of what's he do, but what's a real day in the life of Pete like? When Gareth goes home, we all know the music side, but these other sides, and building it as much as possible so that people feel that constant connectivity to the club, so they're more likely, and this is the non-altruistic part, to want to go out and see them. I think that one of the things that we have done successfully, that again, we don't talk about. When we took over the club, they sold the prior year 90 or 95,000 pounds worth of merchandise. It only cost them about 120,000 to do that by the time you put in the labor and the materials. Last year, with COVID, with the shutdown, we exceeded 250, I want to say, our first full year. And this year will be closer to 600,000. That begins to generate real revenue that we can maybe buy that striker that they want me to get instead of cutting out my fireworks. And Wycombe TV will be a big part of that. It will be, I can see where Phil, we already do his Ringing the Blues broadcast through it, which I think is terrific, but there will be other people out there. It wouldn't surprise me to see a former player come on board and do a weekly summary of League One or championship activity or all three, sort of getting into it in a different way.
What it sounds like you're eventually almost working towards is that actually you'll be able to come home from work and watch an hour or two of Wycombe Wanderers content rather than watching Sky, BBC, whatever. And
if you think about it this way, and this sounds less sporting interested than I am, but it's a fair summary. I see the team as content, and the major source of our content, around which all the other content ultimately revolves. But instead of just doing 2 hours of TV a week, you'll be able to do 6, 8, 10 hours so that the guy who comes home from work flips it on, what's going on? Well, the latest is Joe Jacobson signed his contract for next year, but we've got Stephanie so-and-so who's critical of that now coming on to talk about it, or who's in favor of it, and we're going to have a little 5-minute show. But before we do that, let's go back and look at what Joe's done for the club over the past 4 years, and who else could we have gotten instead of Joe? Have some fun with it and make it interesting. The part that's difficult is how much do you spend creating that for an audience of 23 people? And so how do you make that audience not 23? But I want to say we're pretty close to, I don't want to use a number that turns out to be wrong, but we're bumping up against 1,000 people who are now doing the subscription on it. And as you get to that 1,000, then that pays for a lot of sense. When you get to 5,000, you have something that really works. And I think that is very conceivable for us, particularly in the growth areas outside the UK. One of the things I'm proudest of is the whole worldwide Wanderer phenomenon, which is created in whole cloth by me one day because I love the alliteration of it. And I realize that we do have a worldwide deal. And so
I love that we're finding out where some of these things have come from you buying to the Wycombe Wanderers worldwide phenomenon, which it is just wonderful and fascinating. I think as well, going back to the Wanderers TV and the content, is that actually we have such interesting players and coaching staff. You hear some managers speaking after a game and they come out with the same thing over and over again. But Gareth is such an interesting character, and the players as well. Joe Jacobson that you mentioned, who does all of the tweets and stuff with his dad as well, and obviously Bayo. There's so much.
One of the things I would tell you that comes from the vantage point of being 100 years old is that I have learned that people are interesting, and if you have the right people asking questions, you find out that your dad used to go to Chicago, and therefore you became a Chicago Cubs fan. And so when somebody mentions Andre Dawson, you stand up and salute. What the hell? Who would have thought that? But it requires, and you know this because the business you're in, a special person to do that interview. There are hundreds of interviewers who have the technique of saying, well, Joe, I noticed you were able to hit a left-in swinger from the corner, and that caught him off guard. Isn't that right? Proving how smart the interviewer is, as opposed to a guy who says, Joe, what were you thinking when you walked up there? What was your goal when I know you wanted to score, and has that additional little bit of professionalism that can say, I wasn't sure, Joe, if you were going to go for a left-in swinger or not, because I saw Gareth cheating up there. What was happening there? You know, somebody who can engage in a discussion that leaves the listener informed in a way they would not have been. We had a baseball broadcaster for us 100 years ago. He was the smartest guy I've ever met in baseball. He was too smart by half because we had some very good people to interview, but his interviews were basically cross-examination techniques. Isn't it true? Isn't it true? Isn't it true? So,
and they end up feeling like they're on the stand. And also, if you do that as well, they're not probably going to give you quite as much as if you just let them talk.
If you let people talk, they get into things that you never would have expected. And that tangent may become the show.
Yeah. So true.
The question I have is, people have been so kind to us and things have gone so well. Have we built up an unjustifiable, what's the right word, expectation in people's mind that nobody can now meet?
It's always tricky, the success, isn't it? And it's such a football thing in that you appoint a new manager, and that manager in their first season gets you promoted, and so the expectation goes through the roof. And if that manager in that next season gets relegated and maybe struggles to get out the division the following season, then people are starting to snipe and whatever. I think it's slightly different in that you guys are the owners. I think we've seen so many terrible owners at places, and you'll know this from speaking to the guys at Bury.
Yeah. God, that guy was idiot.
And the trouble is, there's so many of them. In football over the years, clubs are littered with these terrible owners that have taken over. So I think everybody can see that actually what you're doing comes from a really good place and comes from a love of soccer and a love of Wycombe. The fact that Pete is there acting the whole time on your behalf. You're not the owners who you never see, and that's where I think the criticism so often comes in. Right. Is when you've got these and Everton maybe being a good example. You've got a Chinese owner or whatever, and they're never seen, and so there's a lot of sniping and a lot of we don't really know what's going on. The fact that and I saw you a couple of weeks ago, just wandering down in front, because I sit on the tunnel side, right? What I always consider the old main stand, and saw you, and you're so visible, and Pete's so visible, and I think people love that, and you're not just sitting in the director's box either, you're mingling. And so I think there's a huge amount of trust that actually the fans have.
Well, one of the things the reason I ask the question is I sense that, and it's something it's not that we deliberately change our person, it is who we are.
Yeah, and that comes across as well. I don't believe you're putting on an act for a moment.
But it begins to create, God, you wonder, can we meet our own level of expectation? Because I am not fabulously rich, and I am never going to be the guy. We may put a couple of $1 million into the club this year because we're doing a lot of infrastructure work and we're paying the right way and the like. But I'm not going to be the guy who's writing a £20 million check ever. So I worry about that. It's funny, the young Twitteristas, they get crazy sometimes, and
I think if we don't go up this season, you'll get the Facebook, the Twitter, people will complain, as I alluded to when we were chatting, a few moments ago, the people were calling for Gareth's head, saying he'd taken the club as far as, and exactly that. You're not going to, if we don't go up at the end, even if we start badly next season, you're not going to get people saying Couhigs out at all. at all. We're
Yeah.
so far away from that.
I have a buddy of mine, Vince Provenza. He calls me. He's from New Orleans. He follows the club now. He calls into Phil, or he texts Phil and all that. And, you know, his big deal is, how are we still playing Akinfenwa? That's a bad sign, you know. And so I said, Phil, I said, Vince, complain. I don't care. I don't manage the team. Yeah, but you ought to have some influence. I could, I guess, but I'm never going to.
And I think also the answer is, he's still got something.
He
There's
does
something
have
about
something.
him. You know, he can still
And
bring
he's
that
a
ball
wonderful
down.
guy.
He's a brilliant, you know.
When we're planning our end of the season trip, we're doing it so that we can transition to next year or the playoffs. But also, I want to be there when we do the goodbye to Matt Bloom field. We're going to do that on the 19th for the Plymouth game. And then on the 23rd, when it's goodbye to Bayo.
Yeah.
Who has meant a lot. He's a funny cat. When Trevor first introduced me to him, he came over and tried to give me the big bro hug, you know? And I said, man, I don't do that with anybody. And he said, you will with me before it's
wow.
over. And by the next time I saw him, there I was.
I mean, he's such a wonderful ambassador for
He
our
is,
club.
for the sport.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, and a great human being.